Hello everybody, this is Jasmari Torres and my partner is Krista Marquez, and we will be presenting our Technology Infused module. Our perceptions about teaching English language learners before taking this course. We were not aware that ESL and bilingual education was a huge part of education today. ELLs were recent immigrants to the country and had little to no educational backgrounds. ELLs are harder to teach than native English-speaking students. Speaking their native language will get in the way of ELLs' English learning. ESL classes were only for students who are bilingual and needed a way to transition to regular English classes. Our perception about teaching English language learners after taking this course. ESL and bilingual education is very important because a significant percentage of school-age children in the country are ELLs. ELLs come from all walks of life. They may be recent arrivals to the U.S., or they could be born here or have lived here for most of their lives and have a wide array of academic backgrounds. Teaching an ELL is not any harder or easier compared to a native English speaker. Continuing to use and learn in L1 does not hinder the acquisition of L2. ESL and bilingual classes are not just used for a transition for non-English speaking students. They are programs that are offered to help students learn English and to move to a traditional classroom, or used as enrichment programs to help students learn two languages and be fully bilingual. Misconceptions. Misconception number 1. All ELLs come from Spanish-speaking country or backgrounds. False. According to the National Center for Educational Statistics, while Spanish is the most commonly reported languages spoken by 3.7 million ELLs in the country, Arabic, Chinese, Vietnamese are also part of the top languages spoken by ELLs in the United States. Misconception number 2. Only students who already speak a language other than English can be in a bilingual program. False. This is a very common misconception. The truth is, there are various different bilingual program models, and many schools are now implementing two-way dual language programs. Misconception number 3. In order to learn English, a student must completely stop using their native language. False. Research shows that the retention and development of both L1 and L2 is the most beneficial for ELLs. If an ELL is fluent in their L1, they have a better chance of becoming fluent in L2. Misconception number 4. Parents of ELLs don't know English. False. My parents were both ELLs but spoke English fluently, but they simply wanted their children to have a foundation in speaking Spanish. This is a prime example that parents of ELLs may know English and just chose to raise their children speaking their native language. Misconception number 5. All ELLs are immigrants. False. According to the Office of English Language Acquisition in 2012, 57% of ELLs were U.S. born. This percentage is made up of second-generation non-native English speakers and third-generation non-native English speakers. Critical concepts and theories. Krashen's effective filter. Krashen's effective filter states that there are many things that can affect or filter language acquisition. They include self-confidence, anxiety, and motivation of the ELL. CALPs and BICs. There are two types of language: conversational, or BICs, and academic language, or CALP. It is important to know the difference between the two and not assume that because a student has BICs, they also have CALP. The PRISM model. It is a model that shows interrelated components that influence L1 and L2 acquisition. It has 4 components: linguistic, social-cultural, cognitive, and academic. It is important to know that all of the components are interdependent and must all be equally developed in both L1 and L2 for overall success of the student in language acquisition. Threshold hypothesis. The threshold hypothesis comes from Cummins, and the term was used to characterize the low levels of academic proficiency that some bilingual students seem to have in both L1 and L2. Some students concluded that if certain academic and literacy thresholds have not been fully acquired in the student's first language, he or she may experience cognitive and academic difficulties in their L2. Input hypothesis. A source on input is essential to the acquisition of language. Input hypothesis, one of Krashen's 5 innatist hypotheses, is conceptualized by the formula I plus 1. I, in this case, represents the input, and plus 1 refers to the level just above the learner's proficiency. The do's and don'ts of teaching ELLs. Do keep parents involved. Parental involvement is important because all parents want their students to succeed. Since teachers and parents have the same goal for the student, they can work together more effectively, and the parents can help the development of L1 at home, which in turn will help in the acquisition of L2 in school. Don't share student information. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1972, commonly known as FERPA, is a federal law that protects the privacy of student education records. Parents have the right to inspect and review student records, and schools must have written permission from parents to release any information in the student's educational record. Do create a nurturing and comfortable environment for students. It is important to create this environment for ELLs because this will help them to have lower anxiety levels, and they will be able to gain and maintain the confidence in themselves to acquire L2. Don't be biased or stereotype. It's important that when we teach our students, we are free from any form of bias. Our bias can hinder their learning process for our students. For example, if a student has been labeled a troublemaker, and we are automatically on the defense, we are not providing the opportunity for the student to have a connection with the teacher. Do encourage the continued use and development of L1 in the classroom and at home. Development of L1 can help the acquisition of L2 by allowing the student to draw from the experiences and prior knowledge in L1 and transferring that and using it in acquisition of L2. As mentioned in the threshold hypothesis, helping students reach certain thresholds in the L1 is necessary to help them attain high levels of proficiency in L2. Don't force students to speak English. Research has shown us that there are many pathways to L2 acquisition. Some of the periods that students go through when speaking their second language are home language use, nonverbal period, individual words and phrases in their L2, and productive and functional use of L2. Sometimes students will come to our classroom and they may be in the silent period and refuse to speak. This does not mean that they are being disrespectful, aren't interested in learning, or are being difficult. It simply means that they are not in the same stage as the rest of the class, and that is okay. Do differentiate lessons. It is important to create lessons that take all students' needs into account. Differentiating of content, processes, and assessment. It makes for a flexible and accepting environment that is conducive to learning and success for not only ELLs, but all students. Don't have teacher-centered instruction. As educators, we must be able to balance between what is required from the teacher and what the student needs. When giving a lesson, we must make sure that we teach dynamically. Do have patience. Give them time. It is important to have patience with ELLs and to give them time to become comfortable, understand, and really grasp the concepts of L2. Language acquisition is a process and should not be rushed. It takes 2 to 5 years for ELLs to develop BICS and 7 or more years for an ELL to develop CALP. Don't not be flexible. As an educator, one of the things that we must learn is that flexibility is necessary. We must be flexible with our lesson plans and make sure that it is engaging to every student. We may have students with physical or learning disabilities, and if we don't create activities and lessons that will capture that specific demographic, the student is not getting the most out of the learning experience. Here are our resources. Thank you for listening.